a recovering Ironman triathlete.
Answer as well.
Key metrics are things people usually project out to the world, right? A lot of people would probably say net worth is an important metric.
Hello and welcome back to the Masters of Real Estate. Today, we're going to learn from Kevin Shtofman, who is the global head of innovation at Cherre. Kevin, how's it going?
Little to complain about.
Seems like you're joining us from the great state of Texas.
Indeed.
So, Kevin, how do you introduce yourself these days?
A recovering Ironman triathlete, an attempted mediocre golf enthusiast, but mostly a real estate data specialist and dad of three beautiful ladies.
A real estate data specialist and a dad of three beautiful ladies. Indeed. So, Kevin, listeners really want to understand what kind of a person you are before we get into what you're doing. So, what spirit animal or bird best describes you?
The answer that most accurately describes me is probably a chameleon, because I need to be many different things to different people depending on the context. But it's probably not an inviting answer. So I think my real spirit animal is probably an adorable puppy dog.
Well, that's kind of a chameleon answer as well. So
Fair enough.
Kevin, kind of the main operating principle of your life. You are the perfect tool for whatever somebody needs.
I mean, that accurately describes it. As long as you're a large real estate company in need of data management, then yes.
Absolutely. Kevin, what key metric do you think summarizes your entire professional trajectory so far?
So key metrics are things people usually project out to the world, right? A lot of people would probably say net worth is an important metric, but that's not mine. Golf handicap probably would be a good metric, because for a long time it was completely inversely related to my work productivity. As I became a better golfer, I was probably a less good employee or leader, and now actually both are improving in lockstep.
Wow. See, and I play golf a little bit too, not as well as you, and it's a really, really, really tough game, and that's probably why most highly ambitious people tend to enjoy it a lot. So it seems like golf game improvement and your career trajectory is going in parallel. But let's go all the way back to zero. Before you even had an amazing handicap or you started your career. When you look back at your past, what's been your broad trajectory so far?
Roller coaster is probably too extreme of a term to define my life trajectory, but it's all these consultants, right? They build these charts and they're always smooth and up and to the right. That's not how life really is. Mine has been a series of successes and then failures, followed by learnings, and then more successes and failures and learnings. And the good news is every time there's a valley, it's a little higher than the trough that was before. And every time there's a peak, it was higher than the peak before. So it's just continuous improvement, but not in a straight line.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, when I talk to most people, when they start their career, they expect it to be a straight line up. But the truth is, it is a roller coaster. It's just that the peaks get higher and the troughs get easier to handle. What inflection points led you to, where you are today?
Well, first, probably the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis, which for those of our listeners who are a little too young to remember, that's when most banks were on the verge of failure, if not being saved by the government, driven by over leverage in the real estate industry. That was the first time in my life where, the market can go down. That was a big surprise, as it doesn't only go one direction. And I was getting my MBA at the time. So I got lucky in that I got to watch it happen from the sidelines and not while I was at a job where folks are getting laid off or demoted or missing bonuses. The second big inflection point was when I left the world of large companies, right? I was at Morgan Stanley and then Ernst & Young and then Deloitte. When I left that world, to join a property technology startup and was employee number 10. Right?
Mm.
Going from an environment where you have a massive organization and massive support to we need you to run sales and operations. And by the way, the toilet also needs cleaning. It's this
Yeah.
very, very different world.
So it seems like you started in large companies and like you said, the Morgan Stanleys and the Deloittes of the world, and you became an employee number 10 at a property technology startup. What influenced you to make that large shift?
Yeah, making a massive shift in any direction, a career change, company size, leadership role. I relied on mentors. I didn't make this decision on my own. I went to family members, especially my wife. I went to old bosses I used to work with and other just folks that I trusted in my network. And then after all of that, I went to my current leadership before I left the company and said, if you were me, what would you do? And it was a pretty resounding, what do you have to lose? Go do this. Go take this risk. The worst thing that happens is it doesn't work out. You fall flat and then you come back after a year with some really valuable lessons learned. And that was six years ago. So I think I'm a property technology guy now.
Wow. It seems like you were in consulting before and now you're in property technology consulting. So how did you decide to hyper specialize in real estate consulting or prop tech?
So the drive for specialization really came from the way the market was going. So when I was at Deloitte, my responsibility was evaluating a lot of these new real estate technology startups that clients were asking Deloitte which ones they should use. There was
Hmm.
this massive growth in the launch of companies. And so they had hundreds or even thousands of companies they had to review. So my purview was within the United States, review all of these companies and get to know them and decide which ones should get valuable time in front of our clients. And I just happened to meet one that I thought was so interesting and in a category that was going to be massive, the world of data management for real estate, that I decided to leave that security blanket of a large salary and a large support network and go to a small company and see if I could grow it.
Seems like you grew it instead. Seems like Cherry has grown dramatically since you've joined, but seems like you put a lot of emphasis on learning and getting advice from mentors. So, what is the key pieces of advice that you've absorbed from mentors and parental figures in your life?
I think the three most important lessons I've learned from mentors, number one is you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. So if you spend twice the amount of time listening than you do talking, you will do twice the amount of time learning than you do work. And ideally, that grows over time. Number two, you don't have to put on a brave face that you're perfect and you always know the answer. People are skeptical of that, like know it all, fake it till you make it all the time mentality. People respect honesty, transparency, and sometimes even vulnerability because it helps you build relationships and connection. And we're in the software business, we're selling software. People they respect that honesty and transparency. It means you might not get a deal now, but you might get a deal 2 years from now that's much bigger and much more holistic and much more long lasting. And the third lesson, you don't need to be great at everything. Become really, really good, become a specialist at something, and then surround yourself with hardworking, intelligent people that you enjoy being around to do all the things that you're not so good at.
Hmm. I love those three lessons. Kevin, did you come from money or have you ever been broke?
Both. We grew up when I was young, well off, and then I don't know how much I want to share on a podcast, but long story short, my father started a business, and his business partner did some not so honest and transparent things, and caused the business to go under. And we went from being very well off to very not. And so I got to see the world from two extremes, and that taught me two things. One, life can change quickly. So really, really be grateful for what you have and never make assumptions that things will always be whatever situation you are in. And number two, always be prepared for that potential chaos and change. Always have a contingency plan. I would say my wife is actually even better at that though.
The only constant in life is chaos and change, and chaos is the ladder.
True.
Okay, let's focus on what you're working on these days. What's your main focus area these days as the global head of innovation at Cherre?
So my role at Cherre puts me in charge of all of our partnerships. And when I say partnerships, I mean companies that sell data, companies that host data as applications, and then companies that deliver services but could enhance their services with the help powered by our platform. So
Hmm.
I work with all of those companies to devise both legal agreements where we can partner together and then technical specifications so we can share information efficiently for our mutual client.
Hmm. And for companies that are sharing, using, analyzing, and making decisions using data and real estate, what are the biggest pain points you solve for them?
So our typical customer would be a large investor or owner operator of real estate. Any property type, basically any geographic region, although we're not as deep in Asia Pacific as we'd like to be. We can talk about that later. But I think of a real estate deal as happening in 5 different stages. You have to find the deal, you have to underwrite the deal, you have to close the deal, you have to manage or optimize the running of the deal, and then you got to sell it.
Hmm.
And if you do all 5 of those things fairly well, then you can go out to the capital markets, advertise how well you did, your track record, get more money in the door, do it all over again, but
Hmm.
with ideally a larger portfolio. So there's problems that can occur at each of those stages if you don't have the right market information that you could buy, or proprietary internal information that you would own yourself, or information you get from your property managers or JV partners. So those 3 streams of information come together and get integrated in our platform so that you can effectively run a massive real estate business, right? So you can find the deals before your competitors do. So you can underwrite risk and walk away from a potentially bad deal. So you can optimize the profitability of your assets once you own them. And then you can go brag about your track record once you've gone through that cycle, is what Cherre.
Hmm. So for any real estate investor in the world, except for Asia Pacific yet, that is looking to find, underwrite, close, manage, and sell real estate, they need to make a lot of decisions using a lot of data, and Cherry helps them organize all of that and use all that effectively. What do you feel separates Cherry from 99% of the rest of the market?
What separates us from the folks who would compete with us? One, we've spent a significant amount of time and money building what I believe I can publicly say is the world's largest knowledge graph.
Hmm.
So we have a very sophisticated set of data that is modeled and integrated geospatially. So you can trust a property's location and its owner. And then
Hmm.
from there, everything else gets integrated on top. What's
Hmm.
the property worth? What's the cash flow? What's the foot traffic around it? What is the ideal tenant that needs to be in it? What buildings is it near? How far is it from very important points of interest? What climate risk is around the property, right? It's a lot of information. And what makes that so powerful is that we have a network of almost 150 different partners that sell their own information or application. And that network effect of being able to host data from those partners or integrate with those applications, it creates just this massive ecosystem and network effect to where size begets size and
Hmm.
alpha begets alpha.
Hmm. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It's
And
a
does
it's a, it's an overnight success that took 7 years.
and is that the Cherry's primary source of revenue? It's helping um, chief information officers at a really large real estate company organize all their data so they can generate information.
So
Insights. Hmm.
yeah, Cherre 1.0, I think, I'm sure everybody that's listening to your podcast has a smartphone at this point. Cherre 1.0 tried to be iOS.
Hmm.
We wanted everything to happen in our platform. We integrate the data, we visualize the data, we run the workflow, right? And the feedback we got from all of those CIOs was, if you do that, what's my job? And so they would prefer to build this stuff themselves because of the control you get and the IP that you could build on top. So Cherre 2.0, the shift probably started happening around 2 years ago, and now it's really come to fruition, is that we handle the upfront toughness of ingesting, integrating, and validating all of that data, and then preparing it into a model, a flexible model that those CIOs can then go do whatever they want with. Build dashboards on top, build bespoke reporting packages that could go to executives or investors or auditors or partners. Or in today's new age, put AI on top of it and do scenario analysis and forecasting. And the CIO and then all of the business people that the CIO answers to, asset management, acquisitions, executive leadership, they can now respond to the business a lot
Hmm.
faster. Who are my top 10 tenants? Where are the best markets to acquire property right now? Should I go overweight in self-storage or data centers and walk away from office? Right? As long as you now have the data in place, you can run those analytics much faster. And the CIO remains in control of everything that happens downstream, just enabled by our platform.
It seems like Cherry 1.0 plus 2.0 is managing over $3 trillion of assets on the platform. Last I checked your website. So, what was the aha moment that unlocked Cherry 2.0 and helped you reach massive scale?
So the biggest change was when the large investors came to us and said, it's really cool that you connect data from accounting systems and leasing tools, but we don't have those. We
Hmm.
just allocate capital. We have a bunch of other people that have their own system, right? Our property managers, our JV partners, they do things in their own system. And then they just send us a bunch of reports every month. But because there are 150 different managers, that means there's 150 different data, 150 different accounting charts of account. We need to report at the corporate level how everything's going. How can you do that for us? So we built a product called the Data Submission Portal. It does that. But it does that in a transparent way where each client can say how the mapping should go, what validation rules should be in place, what approval thresholds are required. And all of that happens before anybody in the business sees the data.
Hmm.
That way, it's like gone through a very, very transparent but rigorous and secure process before anything happens about reporting on aged receivables or lease turns or energy production or anything like that.
And can you share some of the pivotal decisions that significantly improved Cherry's trajectory in the past? Like, what were some of the decisions made behind the scenes that led you to truly building this platform that's helping so many customers right
Uh, Honestly, the biggest success for us has come down to just two different buckets of one are our largest clients who gave us a bunch of constructive feedback and said, here's what we like about the platform and here's what's missing. And our product team stepping up and answering the call, right? So some of those examples would be making the data available to distribute into a data warehouse that they own. So they get the power back and the control in the process of visualization. That was a big one. The other was providing them the ability to export data into multiple formats, putting it back into Excel where every analyst lives, spinning it up into PDFs that can be shared with audience. And then the second big bucket was our large channel partners. So consulting firms, services firms, folks like PwC, Lion Point Consulting Group, CBRE. Like these folks are on the ground every day with the companies we want to become our clients, and they're delivering advice to them and services to them. And they come back to us and they say, this is what we're hearing from the market on what you need in your platform. And
Hmm.
we prioritize a lot of their advice because they're having so many more conversations with potential end users that we just don't have the bandwidth to have because we're a company of 90.
Hmm. Absolutely. And what's the story behind this 90% company being pronounced as Cherry but written as Cherre?
So I asked that question to the founders before I joined. I said, why didn't you just spell it cherry, like the fruit? Because that's how we pronounce it. And our logo is a cherry. They said, well, number one, we would have been like the fourth company
Hmm.
named Cherry, and we would have had to compete for a domain name. And it kind of started as a joke, but then we realized, wait, finishing the word with RE means real estate. So the cherry on top in real estate became
It's
this moniker. And it's been like an inside joke, but now we've grown so much and so many people know it that has what stuck.
a cherry on top of real estate, and more people will know it once they hear this. So, Kevin, what's your main aspiration for Cherry over the next 12 months?
Over the next 12 months, growth of pretty much everything, right? More assets on the management in the platform, more features in the platform, more clients, more partners. But more by itself isn't always better. So, more with our best data provider,
Hmm.
more engagement with our best application, more growth with our best channel partner. I think I mentioned we have about 150 partners. The biggest growth comes from about 10%. And I
Hmm.
think it will continue to be that way. So we're going to dig in further. So it will mean, more but better across our entire ecosystem.
And what are the biggest bottlenecks to identifying, your growth or finding out which of these channel partners will work the best for you? What are the biggest bottlenecks in working with them?
I think the biggest bottleneck to geographic growth is the common request from clients to say, will you have a local team on the ground to work with us?
Hmm.
And unless there's a minimum amount of recurring revenue coming from that region, it's hard to justify hiring a large team on the ground. The days of zero interest rates and big venture capital valuations are behind us, and there's a lot more scrutiny on what you do with every dollar that you raise. So our approach to that has been to work with local partners in each region that know the market, that know the buyers, that know the tech ecosystem, so they can tell us who we should be spending time with from an application or data partners perspective in each region. That's
Hmm.
been super helpful to us to grow in a capital efficient way.
Absolutely. And for a chief IT officer or information officer listening to this that's highly interested in using Cherry's platform and partnerships to really scale the insights they're getting from their data, how should they reach out to you and your team, Kevin?
Honestly, there's so many different channels out there, but the best and most efficient one is just to find me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And Kevin, what's your ultimate vision for Cherry?
In a perfect world, my ultimate vision for Cherry is to IPO,
Hmm.
to really, really be a public facing company. Every real estate company, regardless of where it is regionally, regardless of where it is in the capital stack, and regardless of how a company interacts with the built world, any company would use Cherry as their core data management infrastructure.
And what are the problems you're seeing in data management infrastructure that still haven't been solved properly yet?
A lot of people like to say that real estate industry adopts technology slower than other industries. I'm not sure that that's true, but often what is slowing real estate companies down is the tough and unfun work of just integrating all information together in a standardized way so they can actually do things with it. I'm sure you know many real estate people. They are high energy. They want things done quickly. Big dollars are at stake when they make decisions. So they would prefer not a shortcut. If I can introduce this one solution for my acquisitions team, I'm just going to go do it. If I
Hmm.
can introduce a solution for my asset management team within my office portfolio, I'm just going to do it. It's hard to say across the entire organization, we're going to have one place where all the information sits and it's modeled and it's standardized and it's approved and it's available to whoever should have access to it. That foundation that is then flexible and scalable, it's hard to make that investment. But
Hmm.
I would argue that like the world's top performers, the Blackstones of the world, they embraced this vision many years ago. And because of artificial intelligence, the folks with the biggest scale and the biggest access to the most data, they are going to outperform. And
Hmm.
like the biggest will get bigger, and this gap between have and have not is going to grow.
You can't win the AI war without having really good data.
Correct.
Ken, I'd love to ask you some rapid fire questions. So, if a family office calls you and says, Kevin, we want to invest $100 million, but it has to be in real estate, how would you help them?
Give us the money and we'll give you the advice. We will help you invest those dollars.
And given the exposure you have across so many different real estate asset classes and regions, is there a specific portfolio you have in mind given today's macroeconomic environment?
As in, what is my personal portfolio?
No, like for this $100 million to be
Oh,
invested, yeah. Is there a percentage allocation you have in mind for different sub asset classes in real estate?
I think we don't have time for that very long-winded answer. I'll just say that different property type and different fund structures and strategy will come in and out of favor in each different geographic region, in each different market cycle. And there's like an infinite level of permutations that you could get to what would be the optimal fund allocation for real estate. And that's constantly changing depending on where interest rates are, where local market legislation is, where public sentiment is, where surrounding infrastructure is. So I don't think there's one specific asset allocation model that's going to work for any specific family office. It really needs to depend on what the time horizon is, where their sentiment is, if they have like their heartstrings are for a particular locality, and what their goals are with the money. Like if they just want it to grow over time and they're never going to take dividends, or if they're constantly reinvesting the proceeds or wanting to diversify part of that money out of real estate into other real assets.
Hmm, that makes complete sense. And talking about portfolios, what is your own personal real estate portfolio like?
So, other than our own single family home and a couple small stakes with friends of mine who run real estate funds, I prefer to keep most of our family assets in very low cost ETFs, some of which are focused on real estate, that are rebalanced quarterly. And I don't trade them. I just set it and forget it. It's going to grow over time. Typically, high expense ratios are what actually affect your long term performance in the markets. The exception to that is if you have proprietary inside information that's obtained legally, right? And usually that information will cause you to put money into venture capital, right? You'll back companies where you know something about that company that you're allowed to know, but the wider market doesn't have access to that information, and that will help you outperform. You shouldn't always put all of your money into that world, but if you have some additional dollars, it's a good way to take a little bit more risk for a much higher return.
Oh, love that. It's a hybrid of real estate and set it and forget it in equities, but still some reserves for special opportunities.
Exactly.
But what organization or institution would you fix, Kevin, if you had the time?
Oh my gosh. What organization would I fix? I don't know that I'm experienced enough or smart enough to tell a company that's living and breathing their organization every day how they can be so much better. But I do have a lot of strong opinions on where I see some of our governmental entities and bodies fail us. And the best example I can give is when governments try to introduce policy that they think is going to help a targeted audience and it ends up having the opposite effect. And the
Hmm.
best example I can give is with rent control.
Hmm.
So a lot of very, very well-meaning politicians in large cities will cap rents to protect consumers because rents are going up quickly. The problem is that effect is that it limits the amount of supply that gets built because developers say, well, if I can only get XYZ in rent and costs are going up for both construction materials and labor, I'm not incentivized to build more buildings in that market area. And then that creates a vicious cycle that continues to limit supply, and then rents continue to go up past the rent control date. So The real solution would be to streamline permitting and regulations so that you can encourage more supply to get built, and that supply creates more competition in the market area with building stock, which then makes rents more reasonable for all potential residents. And so, like, there are like probably 100 of those examples I could give about where a lot of unintended consequences happen from government.
I'll clip this and send it to three mayors in my county who are actually thinking about rent control right now. So, Kevin, you're a proud father of three girls. If they agree to be personally mentored and coached by you professionally, what's the number one skill you would teach them?
I think my girls are teaching me more than I'm teaching them, to be honest. But if I could only give them one piece of advice, it's just to be really good listeners and be patient people. I think most decisions that people make that they end up regretting are just decisions they made when they were in the height of their emotion, and they made them too quickly without taking and
Mm.
thinking about it. No one's perfect, but I think if you listen more than you talk and you just take a beat before you try to make a decision, your odds of success are just so much higher.
Listen and gather data before you make a decision, either about talking or any major decision overall. That was Kevin Shtofman, the global head of innovation at Cherre, who is a chameleon but also a puppy dog. He's a fix it for everything. And if you ever are dealing with a lot of real estate data and need to find a way to get insights from it as quickly as possible, you should reach out to him on LinkedIn. I'll add the link in the description. If you ever want to talk about real estate, shoot me a note on nick@home.llc. Thanks, everyone.